From a young age, we are taught that stretching is an important part of a fitness routine. And because of this, we come to think that stretching is necessary for preventing injuries and performing well in sport. But what we don't realize is that the importance that we place on stretching is actually based more on assumption than science. Over the last 20 years, there have been many sports and medical studies that have questioned the effects of stretching. What they have found is that, surprisingly, stretching doesn't actually benefit athletes as much as we thought. In fact, in some instances, it has even been suggested that stretching might hinder performance. But that's not to say that you should stop stretching altogether. Despite some of this research, there are still benefits to stretching, and it can help your training as a runner. In this video, I'm going to share what we know about stretching from the research, as well as give you some of my tips from my experience as a physiotherapist and a runner on when and how you should stretch to get the most benefit. Before I dive into it, I want to start by making a note that in the research, there are two different categories of stretching: acute and chronic. And these are based on when and how the stretching is done. So acute stretching is classified as the stretching that is done immediately before or after other exercise. So this is the quick stretching you do as part of a warm-up or cool down. Chronic stretching, on the other hand, is stretching that is done independent of other exercise, and it is done by following a regular, structured program where the sole purpose is increasing flexibility. So an example of this is spending 20 or 30 minutes a couple of times a week working through a series of stretches to get more flexible. And this distinction is important because we have found that the way you stretch results in very different outcomes. The most significant difference is that it is only with chronic stretching that you're going to see improvements in flexibility over time. Stretching that's done as part of a warm-up doesn't improve flexibility. And so if your goal is to get better range of movement, become more flexible and mobile, you need to do regular stretching that is in addition to other exercise, not just as part of your warm-up routine. And then this leads me to the most important question: do runners need to be flexible? Does being limber make you a better runner, and does it help prevent injuries? And while most people will assume that flexibility is a good thing and it must help your performance, research actually shows the opposite. In one particular study, researchers took 100 recreational runners, measured everyone's flexibility, and then assessed their running. What they found was that the runners with the worst flexibility actually ran with the most efficiency. The researchers from this study hypothesized that this is because inflexibility or stiffness around joints creates a natural stability, and this helps runners run smoother. On the contrary, runners who are hyperflexible tend to have a lot of extra movement in their joints, and while this may be beneficial in some sports, for runners it means you have to work much harder to control your movement and run smoothly. And so this research really gives us two key takeaways. One, that flexibility on its own does not correlate with better running form. And two, that it is stability that is more important than flexibility. So whether you are naturally flexible or inflexible, you should focus on improving your stability and control rather than your flexibility. The next big question is whether stretching prevents injuries. And this is another common assumption. In fact, people are often told that the reason they get injured in the first place is because they didn't stretch enough. But researchers have found this to not be true either. For example, this study from the Netherlands looked at the effect of stretching on injury over a 10-week program, and they reported that stretching had no impact on the prevalence of overuse injuries. So doing regular stretching did not help runners avoid injury. However, while research hasn't proven that stretching can help prevent injuries, anecdotally, runners do report that stretching helps them manage aches and pains, as well as reduce some training discomfort. And because of this, many health professionals, including myself, still recommend runners do regular stretching in addition to stability and strength training, especially if it is something that you find helps your body. If you are going to add stretching to your routine, the best thing to do is schedule a regular time each week, ideally after an intense workout, after a long run, or on your day off, when you can spend at least 15 minutes stretching various tight muscles. I don't recommend stretching immediately before you go for a run. There is actually good research to show that this will slow you down and negatively impact your performance. Instead, if you are feeling stiff and uncomfortable before you run, add in an active warm-up just to get your body moving a little bit freer. And stay tuned because I do plan on making a video about my warm-up routine soon. So on those days off or after your long run, what stretches should you do? Unfortunately, there are no magic stretches. Plus, as I've covered in this video, there is no good science to suggest that any stretch is going to fix your problems. In my experience as a runner and as a physio, I find that doing a variety of stretches is best. Some of my personal favorites though are the pigeon stretch for the hips, the cross body stretch for the glutes and back, and then any kind of hamstring and calf stretch. If you're someone who suffers from a particularly tight or sore area, as you're stretching that area, make sure you also focus on the muscles above and below that because, of course, everything in the body is connected. And as a final note, I want to emphasize that while research hasn't been able to prove that stretching is particularly useful for runners, research does consistently show that strength and stability training is. So if you are currently only stretching as a means to manage your pain and prevent injuries, you should really be supplementing that with plenty of strength training in order to get the best results. So thank you for tuning in. I hope this video has been helpful. In the description, I'll add a list of research studies that you can go through yourself if you are interested, and I will also add a link to my website, sprintrehab.com, where you can find training programs and rehab guides to help you run better. So thank you again. My name is Alina Kennedy, and I will see you in the next video.